Hello there, once again, interplanetary travelers, finders of stars, listeners of podcasts, and welcome to another episode of TOMTalks. Today I'm joined by Adam, as always, and everyone's favorite, increasingly tall Verthani, voice of Felino Marana, the one and only Josh Richards. How are you gentle fellows doing today?
Oh, feeling it, getting ready for high storms and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we've got some particularly nasty weather coming to this southern Gulf of Mexico-based region here.
So that's what this Tom Talks is about, right?
Yeah, we're talking about weather for real.
Yep.
We decided to just commit to it and actually do a weather Tom Talks.
Right. I mean, it is wild, though. It's literally like 2 tropical storms, potential hurricanes, like coming into the Gulf at the same time. It's like the perfect storm.
The perfect storm.
Perfect storms, plural.
Well, they will become one if they. I saw a meme of it was the fusions from Dragon Ball Z. It's like 2 characters photoshopped over the 2 tropical storms about to do the fusion ha.
Oh God.
Oh Lord.
Right.
Well, to answer your original question, I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Happy to actually be on another Tom Talks. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
It had in fact been a minute. And I'm happy to have you back.
Yeah.
I am, I'd have to say I'm taking the good with the bad. I'm, in the back part of celebrating my birthday weekend. So that's nice. Went today to my aunt's house and she made me some gumbo and a German chocolate cake from scratch. She's got a little business on the side where she makes delicious cakes. So that was awesome. But I started the weekend off by having to go to urgent care and getting a boot for my swollen, strained, whatever, Achilles tendon, and I'm going to have to go to a specialist next week. So, as I said, taking the good with the bad.
Well, one step at a time. One excruciating, painful step at a time.
Exactly.
Pretty sure that's just like getting old,
It still sucks.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't.
That doesn't make me feel better, Josh. No, but you're probably not wrong. So we decided to have Josh on today, first, as we said, because it's been a while, but also because today we're going to be going over a new book from Paizo for the Starfinder game system, one that we thought was right in Josh's wheelhouse, considering his interest in both real and imaginary flying machines. It's called the Starship Operations Manual, and it adds a whole buttload of new features for starships. So, I'm gonna level with you guys. I have not had the time to read this bad boy cover to cover like I usually at least attempt to do with a new Starfinder book.
You haven't read it cover to cover?
Right.
It.
I know. I didn't do my due diligence. So, I'm going to need you guys to help me through this thing. And in that spirit, we had the idea of breaking the book down into its 4 major chapters. And each one of us will guide us through one of the chapters and we'll just kind of round robin shoot the shit about the other chapter. Sound good?
Sounds
Works
great.
for me.
All right. So quite appropriately, I think. Josh, would you like to start off the meat of this Tom Talks and tell us about chapter 1?
Yeah, sure. So chapter 1 is starting out with all the new crap that they've added when you're building a starship. New weapons, new armor, new drives. There's a ton of stuff. So in the interest of time, I've kind of distilled some of my favorite things from this massive list of things or stuff. And figured start out the same order the book goes with new weapon properties.
Okay. Always excited for that.
Yeah, so probably the coolest in my mind is the addition of anchoring weapons. Now, they're super short range, but it shoots a super massive chain and tethers you to another ship. And once tethered, you can actually board the enemy ship.
Right. And that's going to be a focus of the chapter I go over and something I'm really excited about as well is the new boarding mechanics.
Mm-hmm. There's also
the boarding mechanics are so cool. I'm sorry. I cheated and I read some of Josh's chapter because it's so cool.
Well, I didn't say you couldn't read any. I just want you to handle your chapter,
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. The other one, though, is the buster weapons. So I'd imagine a lot of the people that listen to us have played the Halo games. And
right.
It's always prudent to carry an energy weapon and a kinetic weapon, right? So blast through shields and then follow up with, hurting armor, flesh, whatever. This basically is like an energy weapon that deals damage to, or does extra damage to shields, but barely does any damage to the hull. So it'll eat away the shields. I believe that it hits as well as the ones next to it.
Yeah, dude, that is really slick. It's like just smash through the shields when you're just like, fuck these shields, dude.
And on top of that, if you get hit by one of these, the DC for diverting power to the shields for the engineer on his next turn to try and replenish them is increased by 5. So it makes it that much harder to bring them back.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Great, like early combat, like you start a Starship combat right out the gate, busting their shields up and making it to where they can't restore them. That's really good.
Exactly. Let's see. Another one's intimidating. Allows the captain to perform a taunt against a ship that's already been taunted, or gives a +2 circumstance bonus if that enemy hasn't been taunted yet. So you try it, you fail, and you hit them with a big gun, you can try it again.
Okay.
All right.
And last one, it's one of my favorites, actually probably my favorite out of all of these, are pod-mounted weapons. So you can have a weapon mounted on the exterior of the ship with its own power supply, so it doesn't take away from the PCU of the ship that it's mounted on, right? But if the quadrant that it's mounted on takes hull damage, the pod weapon is wrecked. And if that quadrant takes critical damage, the pod is destroyed, the ammo explodes, and depending on how many rounds are left in it, it does minimum damage per round to your own ship. So like all the ammo blows up and just completely screws you.
Oh, shit.
Wait. Maybe am I confused? Wait, this is something you fire at another ship and attach to theirs, or
no? So
I'm confused.
So think like a weapon pod that like attaches to the outside of the ship, right? And it's got its own ammo. It's self-contained. It has its own power supply. But if it gets blown up, then all the ammo that's sitting inside that pod detonates as well.
Like the risk reward is that you don't have to use any of your power to supply it. Like you're literally just attaching a self-contained weapon onto an arc. It powers itself. It fires itself, all that kind of stuff, right? Doesn't it fire itself with a minor ship crew action?
That's something else that I was going to get to. It doesn't fire itself, but there are automated weapons, or you can increase the build point cost of a weapon to make it automated to where it'll do its own thing. But that's entirely separate from a pod weapon.
Okay. So but the pod, so it just takes away from your power drain.
Right.
It's like the bonus. It's
at
like
the risk of detonate if it's a missile or, a limited fire weapon.
Yeah, you put a nuke there on the outside of your protected hull and shield.
Exactly.
And it gets hit. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, that just sounds like too much risk for the reward to me. I don't think I would want to use pod-mounted weapons.
Well, like let's say you're doing a campaign where you're playing a goblin crew. Like that's the type of shit that a goblin ship would put, they'd find like some turret that got blasted off drifting in space, and they'd just duct tape it to the outside of their ship.
Yeah. Or if it's a smaller ship that doesn't really have much of a power, doesn't have much of a generator for itself, like a little fighter or something, slap some pods on there, weapon pods, to be able to actually have good firepower,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can see that. I feel like I would still avoid it.
Well, I think that reading through that chapter, it seems like there's, they put a lot of options in there to help flesh out the reality of a world that has starships in them. So like if you're building an attack ship or a ship that's in combat all the time, you're certainly not going to take some of the options that's presented. But what it does is it gives the GM some tools to like flavor ships. You could I could see throwing a really, really high tier ship at a party, but having that like weak point pod weapon as like kind of a puzzle to find out during the,
okay.
You know what I mean? And like shit, we can't get through, but damn, if we hit these 4 different pod weapons attached, it's the Luke Skywalker thing, man. Like you just gotta fire the perfect shot. destroying the entire ship, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that being fun as a tool for a GM to use for sure. Or like, you know, speaking to your kind of mention of the realities of a universe with starships, like not all starships are combat starships. So if you had like a transport ship or something like that, or a smaller vessel, like Josh said, you could slap a pod weapon on it just to have some guns, more even for the intimidation factor than necessarily for real combat.
Gosh, and we're going to, you know, we'll get into this, I guess, when we get to my chapter, but my chapter seeps throughout this whole book because now I'm thinking of like, okay, well, maybe your ship crashed onto a planet, you know, and you don't have much choice, you know, like you got your power has to go towards keeping your life support systems alive, but you need some sort of defense because you're, you know, there's all sorts of cool things that you can do. It just, this book, it just expands the rule set, therefore the lore, therefore the stories you can tell. You know, it's really, really neat. Like it's all sorts of great, like inspirational little jumping off points throughout the book.
Right. And I think, in particular, this book, I hesitate to say what it's good for. It's good for lots of things. But to me, what stood out is that it helps provide Starfinder with that like sci-fi grandiose, like flesh out the fact that this is such a large and spread out universe that is dictated by a system of starships and really sets itself aside from a fantasy game like a Pathfinder or 5e or something like that, and really hammers home the sci-fi separation of this kind of system.
Yeah. Well, and on that note with sci-fi, I'm going to go back real quick. There's only two of the new interstellar drives I wanted to talk about. First and foremost is the Hell drive.
Well, first of all, wait.
What?
Interstellar drives? You got to like...
Okay, so they're basically...
set that up a little bit.
Fine. Alternates, they're alternative to drift travel or... different types of like ways of getting around long distances in the material plane.
Right. You say that so nonchalantly. Like, I do think it's a really big deal that they've provided several alternatives to drift travel.
Well, yeah, considering we spent all of season 1, like, chasing down the one thing that was the alternate to drift travel. You know what I mean? Yeah. It turns out there's lots of different ones, you know? So, okay, the Hell Drive. That sounds crazy. What is it?
Yeah, so it's was created by the Asmodeans, and the Church of Asmodeus constructs each Hell Drive individually, specifically for the ship that it's going to go on to, right? But instead of using the drift to travel, it basically, well, not basically, it literally pops you into hell.
So and then the event horizon,
right back into the material plane, at your destination.
just a short trip through hell.
Yeah,
right.
But,
well, as weird as that sounds, so many of the alternate forms of travel, the interstellar drives and stuff like that, are kind of planar based. So, like, if you're not going through the drift, like you may go through like a Fey type plane or something like that. And I think that's really neat. But it means that for you to be able to have these kinds of drives, you gotta be in the know. You gotta know somebody. These are very niche modes of travel.
Absolutely. And on that note, the Hell Drives run on, quote, fuel condensed from damned souls.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ, dude.
And the user's soul is pledged to become fuel for the next generation of Hell Drives.
Oh, wow.
So messed up.
Wowzers, dude.
You got to make a pact with your fucking starship?
Essentially, yeah.
Oh my God.
That just opens up so many cans of worms for me. Like, now I'm thinking of like a Pathfinder warlock who is pledged to his starship as his like demon pact or deity or whatever.
Man, there's so many things that you could do with that. Like, and especially since we're playing a horror campaign, don't think I wasn't tempted when I saw Hell Drive to throw that at you at Signal and Screams. But
you still have time.
That's true.
But, now we'll know
Terry.
What's going on with it. Oh, God, no, please. Not Terry.
Don't you corrupt Terry. No.
No, Terry.
So, speaking of the interstellar drives, one that I don't mean to cut you off if you have
No,
a
go
couple
ahead.
more you want to highlight for us. One that I was really interested in, because I did get to read a little bit. I didn't get to read every one of them, but I got to read 3 or 4 of them just to check out how these things worked. And my favorite was the Constellation Orrery. Which is funny because that sounds like Oren, who is a follower of Ibra, and the Constellation Orrery is Ibra's drive. It literally uses constellations, and the fact that if you go to different planets and different locations in the galaxy, the constellations change. So it basically makes this weird kind of map of the cosmos that to me reminded me like in philosophy of the perfect forms of creatures, right? So it's not like an actual physical map. It's a map of the forms of the constellations and how they're patterned all over the galaxy. But it allows you to basically hop from one location to another based on the constellations around it. And I certainly I could have described that more concisely, but it's so heady and so interesting as a concept for how to like perceive yourself in time and space and how to travel through it.
The Church of Ibra is the sole known purveyor of constellation orrery drives.
Yep.
Right.
But whether the drive's origin lies in the gap or before it is just another cosmic mystery for the faithful to decipher.
Yeah, and looking through this, it looks like almost like a series of think like a subway map or a train map or something like that. Like there are different stations and changing lines to be able to navigate from one place to another, all following the stars. That's really cool.
Well, and what constitutes a station for the constellation Orrery is a star that is in multiple different constellations. So if a single star, like in Orion's belt, is also on the other side of the galaxy, a part of another constellation, because it is a focus point of 2 or 3 different constellations, that makes it a switching point or a way station.
That's bizarre. So cool.
It's awesome.
So many ideas. It's
I know.
It's crazy.
You could do a whole fucking Ebraic campaign, dude.
I know. There's only 20 levels. What are we going to do?
Okay, so we're gonna get off course so fast. So Josh, what else is going on with you? So we did the interstellar drives. Did you have any more of those that stuck out to you that you wanted to mention to us?
Yeah, the Chaos Drive.
Oh, great.
Oh God.
So it tap into the volatile energies of the roiling maelstrom.
That sounds safe.
Yeah, super safe. And that it seems to be, I don't remember what it was called, but in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's basically that where...
Oh, the probability drive?
The probability drive to where shit
Was
goes
it the
nuts.
improbability drive?
Is it?
Maybe.
In Hitchhiker's Guide?
Yeah, but that would make more sense.
Yeah. But apparently crews and passengers can be impacted as well, with pilots finding that their flight controls now monitor power core performance instead, or captains discovering that they must encourage or cajole their ship's weapons to fire in combat.
You've got to
So it's like you got the android, the paranoid android from Hitchhiker's Guide built into he just shows up like, why should I fire this weapon again?
Exactly.
Well, but that lends itself to a certain degree of silliness, but I think also that would be something that would tie so well into like the beginning of a horror campaign, the onset of a horror campaign where like you're flying along normally in your ship or a stolen ship that you don't know operates on a chaos drive, and all of a sudden the pilot station turns into the gunnery, and he's like, what the fuck? I'm not piloting anymore. I don't know what to do.
It's more than that. The entire interior of the ship can change.
Yeah, like it could turn into like a bio ship.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's like just a bunch of tentacles and pods and stuff. And
Right.
Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this?
Right. Perfect nightmare fuel.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool stuff, man.
Dude,
Like,
we're starting
there's
off
whole
hot already.
Yeah, dude, there's so many campaigns just in the drives alone. Just like telling the story of how that would affect somebody. You know, it's great. Well, I mean, there's like security too, right? In building starships. I figure you'd be into that.
Yeah, and we'll get to that.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Got to roll a check. Hold on. Let's roll that computer's check real quick.
now,
What's a 13?
next thing I was wanting to move to, though, was a couple of new armor types. So
Okay.
instead of just having, hull points and shields, you've got basically layered armor, or I think I'm saying this right, ablative armor. It's made to just, slap extra pieces of armor or extra thickness to a hull. Essentially works like temporary HP or temporary.
Oh,
points.
okay.
You're just putting like junk all over your hull.
Yeah,
back
it
to the
did.
goblins,
It did make me think Goblin for sure. But I'm sure, like, that's the thing though. Is like I feel like that's our immediate thought, like our mental connection. But like, I'm sure there's lots of like really legit looking ablative armors. Like you just like massive sheets that you slap onto the side of a thing because you're going into enemy territory. I can imagine the Vesk utilizing that.
Yeah, well, like the example I thought of when I read through that and saw that was actually the Expanse when they were trying to disguise as just like a
junker,
and so they put all that other stuff around it to cover up the Martian.
Yeah, but they're still an elite fucking Martian ship. They
but
slap some tankers on it.
But then didn't they get in a fight and have all that stuff like blasted off? That's just like the image at least I have of that of just a ship being covered up, one way or other, either for stealth and extra defense or for like, Vesk going in for an invasion or something like that, like against the swarm, just put a bunch of as much layer between you and that as possible,
Yep. But that being said, if parts of it start getting knocked off, because it has to be installed, well, it doesn't have to be, but you'd probably want to have it installed equally. Otherwise, you start getting negatives to your piloting modifiers and stuff like that because the ship's not balanced, right?
Right. Well, I can also imagine with that, it kind of a situation where say a smaller like Vesk fighter ship is designed to have two forms, like the ablative armor is like its evolution, you know what I'm saying? Like its normal cruising around form is like smaller, but then, it goes into a docking bay and has ablative armor put on every exterior panel of it. And now it's, 50% larger and is a fucking large, like tank, like gunship.
And because of that, lowers the TL. And, if it's super heavy or like medium or heavy, it can increase its turning distance as well. So it makes it less maneuverable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We've also got new deflector shields. It's an alternate to the standard shields that just kind of have their own HP pool per quadrant. And these instead reduce incoming damage and increases both your AC and TL. So more or less gives you a kind of like DR. But whenever a quadrant takes hull damage, that DR is decreased by 1. So I don't know if I like it more than the other one, but it's a neat option.
Basically, it starts with enhanced AC, and for every hit it takes, it loses AC or TL.
So I believe the AC or the AC and TL stay the same, but its defense value reduces as that quadrant takes hull damage.
Okay.
So say it starts at 5, right? And you get hit on the forward arc. You take hull damage to the forward arc. The next shot that you take would be damage would be reduced by 4 instead.
Oh, so okay, like you were saying with DR, it's like if you have a rank 5 or whatever, when you get shot, say you get shot for 10 points of damage, 5 of that doesn't go through, 5 goes through to your shields.
And then the next
but
time
then
you
the
get
next
hit on
time
that arc,
only 4 goes through.
Exactly.
Oh, dude, I would use the
cool.
fuck out of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and it regenerates outside of combat at 1 DV per minute. So
Per minute? Oh, that's good. I was thinking like per day or something.
That's cool though. Just like poof, poof, just bouncing shit off, dude. You know, I like it.
There's fortified hulls that I'm not going to go super deep into, but that can increase a vessel's critical threshold.
Oh, that's good. That's always nice.
That's nice. Yeah.
As well as reinforced bulkheads that make it to where there's less chance of having catastrophic system damage to, life support and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, like I like that they have like things that interact with the different parts of the game. You know what I mean? Because that's what makes it all kind of start feeling like it connects together. And Starship Combat needs a little bit more of that, I think, for it to like, I think this book, much like the character operations manual for PCs, this book kind of finishes the mini game of Starship Combat.
Right. It's not an addition to, it is a completion of.
Right. And I guess it's fair to say that this would be like the advanced Starship Combat, because having all this at your first Starship Combat would be way overwhelming,
Yeah.
So I'll say that, but like just to have all these different types of things that interact with the core mechanics, so if you find yourself really not wanting thresholds to get hit, you have a way to do that. Because that would be a problem that somebody in the world would have tried to come up with a solution for, and I just like that.
Well, it increases the gamesmanship of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a number of things that we've tried to do as a party that's just like, okay, well, how do we make that work? There's nothing written for it,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think the nature of this book, kind of a little bit to Adam's point, is that if you look at it as an advanced Starship Combat guide to some degree, the thing that this book is going to do, and is trying to do, I think, to some degree, is encourage your campaigns to have more Starship Combat and for you to want to have more Starship Combat and to make the starships another character in the game. And that's been, I know from watching a lot of, Starfinder Wednesdays and stuff like that is one of the kind of primary tenets they had in Starfinder. And that's one of the reasons they don't, do an entire 6-book campaign on one planet, is because what sets Starfinder apart for the game designers is that you have to be constantly going somewhere in your starship because they want your starships involved. And they had a rough go of it at first. There was a lot of pushback against Starship Combat. And now I think I guess time will tell if they were successful at making it to where people are going to want to engage more with Starship, not only combat, but travel in general. But I do think it's a great tool and a great boost for that.
Yeah. Well, and, facilitating future campaigns that are centered around that.
We'll get to that.
That's Adam's chapter, but I would love to play one eventually.
Yeah.
So, all right, what's next, Josh?
Next are going to be special materials. So, ships normally made from, I don't know, titanium, whatever metals and stuff, real world kind of analogs.
Right.
These are some materials that can be, you basically spend more build points and can get special effects or, like increased AC or increased TL or...
I'm sure there's even some magic ones, right?
Yeah, that was actually the one that I was going to highlight here. It's called No Qual. And it basically makes it to where it deflects magical attacks and absorbs ambient magic, but makes it to where your magic officer has a harder time getting stuff done. So it's just kind of
because his magic has to get through that shielding, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No Qual was the stuff that was on the ship in Dead Suns, on that first ship where all the Akata were, and they,
Oh, okay.
And there was that like material that they could basically scavenge, that they sold for like a lot of money or whatever. Yeah, that's it's No Qual. Cool.
They're doing a throwback to their own shit. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Meta.
Well, they're just explaining what it is.
But it can also be applied to sensors. It's not just limited to the armor as well. That makes it to where the science officer can use the scan crew action, and if they exceed the check by 5 or more, they can choose to learn only one piece of information, and instead of choosing to learn a piece of information, they can scramble the other ship sensors.
Okay.
So turning a scan into an offensive thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's one thing I do like is, and we'll get to it more in my chapter, is that they've given you a lot more options in Starship Combat, aside from just like doing your gunnery checks or doing your magic checks. Like they're it's so much more complicated, and there's so many more effects that you can get from everything in Starship Combat.
Yeah. And talking about more things, I've still got more stuff in the way of expansion bays.
Oh, my gosh.
Great.
There are a ton of these, but most relevant, I think, to our podcast would be the combat training facility.
Oh, they actually did
Yep.
the thing that I've flavored forever.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's a specialized gym in a miniature arena. Has holographic targets and, close quarter tactics and self-defense scenarios and stuff that you can run through, which, more or less what we've been doing anyways.
Right.
But it adds caches of weapons and armor spread throughout the ship to help resist being boarded.
Right, which that being a new mechanic is very relevant.
Well, it gives you boosts too, right? If you use that expansion bay or the combat training facility, if you use that, like, don't you improve one of the boarding mechanics for your crew?
Yeah, it basically treats you, and we'll get into this when we get over to Adam's section, but treats them as skilled instead of whatever the lower grade readiness is. Another one, I just thought this was kind of funny. I can imagine a ship with a hell drive on it having a corpse recycler that you can dump bodies into and
For fuel.
Have necrographed UPVs.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
To make your own necrografts. Oh, dude. If you had like an evil party or a full like undead party or something like that.
The Eoxians.
Yeah, just make a bunch of necrographs. Eoxian pirate campaign. Let's do it.
Oh, dude.
Ooh-wee.
Dude. We'll have a hell drive in that thing. It'll be fucking dope.
Yeah, you can also mount a drop pod into an expansion bay now. So have an actual landing craft. Yeah,
I'll get into drop pods.
What else? External, similar to the pods, you can have external expansion bays now.
You can just attach them onto your ship.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Believe at the risk of, it's not written as this, but it would make sense to me that it'd follow the same rules as, take critical damage in a spot and it wrecks that expansion bay. But
it does reduce your maneuverability, right? For every couple ones. I don't remember
for every
how
3
much
of them,
is.
it reduces your turn
3.
distance by 1.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so there is some drawback,
Yeah. And there's
more
also
gamesmanship, man. More gamesmanship.
Yeah, exactly. There's also a new Ghost Drive.
Ghost Drive.
Yeah. It can be on large or smaller ships. And as a crew action during the helm phase, a science officer can activate it. And if successful, the drive becomes active and that starship becomes insubstantial, meaning that it can pass through other targets' hexes or other ships' hexes and not have the opportunity attacks.
Yeah, that you can basically phase through other ships without colliding with them.
Mm-hmm. But while it's on, your ship goes slower and has less maneuverability.
I didn't know if the Ghost Drive thing was going to be literal or not.
There's surprisingly not as much in security. I know you mentioned that earlier, Adam, but that's pretty well fleshed out in the original player's handbook. But they did add an emergency accelerator, which is basically just, we got to get out of here. That when turned on, the rest of that round, ship has no shields, can't fire weapons, but if it's active at the beginning of the next gunnery phase, at the end of the next gunnery phase, ship immediately moves 100 hexes in a straight line.
Whoa.
Just scoots, dude. Just
gone.
It's like, y'all shut the fuck up. We got a boot, scoot, and boogie. That's amazing. 100 hexes is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
dude.
a lot.
That's just leave combat.
Right. It's basically like a tiny warp,
I'm going to go ahead and move on to my favorite thing that I've seen in this book so far because I want to use it so badly.
Okay.
It's the consciousness uplink drive.
Oh, shit.
So
is this some altered carbon type shit?
Not so much. It's more, I'm trying to think of a show that's done this. I know I've seen this before in sci-fi somewhere, but you basically jack into the computer of the ship, or you connect your body through a data jack directly to the ship.
It's kind of like a Matrix type thing, right?
Yeah, kinda, but more of a maybe Pacific Rim a little bit, and controlling it through your bodily actions as
Through
opposed
your own,
to
yeah, okay.
But what it does though is it allows the person who's interfaced with the ship to divert, fly, use precognition, scan, and shoot as a minor action.
Whoa!
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And if you have a higher tiered data jack, you give circumstance bonuses to those as well. But the drawback to it is that if the ship takes critical damage and a system becomes glitching, the connected character takes damage equal to the starship's tier or double if the system is malfunctioning or wrecked.
Right. That's the drawback. Every time you describe something cool now, I'm looking for but what's the catch?
Yeah. But yeah, so that damage can be reduced with a successful fortitude save.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's still a trade-off. And, there's even more negative trade-offs potentially. If critical damage makes a system malfunction or wrecked, the feedback disables the part of the user's body that correlates with that system unless they pass a fortitude save.
Oh, God. So, like, if your fucking aft gets messed up.
Oh, no, it's like engines or life support or sensors or what have you. But, yeah, if...
I guess, so, I guess I'm curious about what corresponds to what, because is it like your limbs, like one, like
so
if life support happens, can you not breathe?
Well, like it is close, because engines would be your legs, how you move around, right? Mm-hmm. Life support and power core would be a random vital organ.
Oh God. Your kidneys shut down.
Shut down.
Sensors would be your eyes, and your weapons arrays would be your arms.
That's wild, dude.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So if you fail a fortitude save when taking damage...
It is Pacific Rim, dude. You were right.
Yeah. But if you fail a fortitude save when that system is malfunctioning or wrecked, you basically roll from the wound critical effect or critical hit effect for that piece, right? And if it is malfunctioning, it lasts for 8 hours. If it is wrecked, it's permanent.
Yeah.
Dude.
That's when you said wound, I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. Wow.
But I could see, Fell doing that, losing an arm, and then getting a cybernetic one.
Oh man, it's so.
Right.
It's so.
I could see Mike doing it because he's got great fortitude and like doesn't care because it's so badass. You know.
It's so epic, dude. Like
Mike
it's
needs
just,
a data jack then.
Oh, bro, and just to your point of like Fell doing it and getting his arm cut off, like let Titanium Mike get a titanium right arm. Just let that happen, please. That's so crazy. I feel like 90% of this episode is just going to be like, that's awesome. That's wild. Whoa. Yeah. It's like Weldy reviewing the book.
Well, I mean, I feel attacked, but it's cool.
I mean,
Weldy literally is reviewing this.
Right.
All right.
Either of you ever watch or aware of the show or the anime Outlaw Star?
Only through you saying it. I don't know anything about it.
Well, for those the two of you and those who aren't familiar, the ships in that show had arms, like manipulators, more or less.
Yeah.
You can get that now, which makes me excited because that's a thing I watched when I was growing up, and I just think it's cool as hell. Yeah, but bring it back around to Terry. I want him to be a legitimate virtual intelligence on our ship because that's a thing that this book has added. And that allows him to actually, through a holographic projector, be a corporeal hologram.
Oh my God.
Within the ship that can also act as a combatant and a crew member.
Well, speaking of Altered Carbon, amazing. Like I mentioned earlier, he could be Poe.
Exactly. He's got he'd have his own stat block, build him the same way that you would an NPC. Can upgrade him to different models.
I get to make Terry as an NPC?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Depending on how many build points
you include this in, well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but you do have a ship currently in the upgrade chamber now on the main show, so.
Yeah, I've got some reworking to do since this book's released.
I can't wait to see the like bastardization of what Terry is being combined between like Terry Labonte, Hulk Hogan, whose first name is actually Terry, like all the great Terrys that we could combine him out of, you know? Terry Crews.
Yeah, right.
On top of all this other stuff, they've added in super colossal starships.
Oh my God. It's so
Yep.
much.
Yes, they have. And these are like, I describe them or briefly describe them later in my chapter as either world ships or world enders.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like they're enormous. And again, I'm not going to go into all the details nitty gritty about them, but they're over 6 miles long.
All
6
you need to know
miles.
is that super colossal starships now
Right.
exist. Like,
Well, and they're exclusively level 20, I believe.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're floating cities set for long range exploration or colonization. They're referred to as ultranauts. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so damn cool.
Or base ships.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
right.
Like the Adari.
Yeah, right. That's a base ship.
But yeah, so that pretty much wraps the first part of, all the new stuff for building a starship. Like there's just so much, and I'm looking forward to being able to play with it all.
That's the thing with these entire Paizo book reviews is like you're never going to get to everything and you're still going to run long and want to talk about it for 3 hours after you finish recording,
Mm-hmm.
So I will say,
That being said, strap in, folks.
right. So we're going to move on to the second chapter, which I'm covering, which is on Starship Combat. Okay. And before we do that, I'm going to take a couple sips of my delicious Susie B because I'm going to need it because I'm going to run fast through
All
this
right,
shit.
here we go.
Because there's a lot to cover.
I'll cheers you. Virtual
Cheers.
cheers you.
Cheers with a rum and coke.
I'm drinking a Newton's Folly cider. It's like my favorite cider these days.
Nice.
Good.
Oh, it's not Cidre?
That's the Stella.
Right.
The Stella à trois cidre.
Or as
It's
my
super fancy.
grandfather called Stella Artois.
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 Right. All right. Chapter 2, Starship Combat, the breakdown. So right out of the gate on the chapter for Starship Combat, we have new rules, as you mentioned, for boarding other starships, which I think we all agree is very cool, especially for people wanting to dig into like a pirate-based homebrew or something based out of the diaspora or EOX, all of that pirate stuff is so much more viable as a campaign option or a Starship crew option. So, if you want to incorporate boarding ships into your game, there are 4 ways that this can technically be done. And I said technically for a very good reason. 1, you can use what Josh mentioned earlier, an anchoring weapon to attach your ship to another ship. And I love that you said it straight up, like you basically just throw out massive chains and, grab another ship with these chain guns or whatever.
It's one of my favorite things to do in Sea of Thieves. Shoot the tether at another ship and then launch yourself to it. It's so fucking fun.
So number 2, you could choose instead to just ram the other ship and direct a boarding party to invade, because now we have fucking rams you can attach to the front of your ships. You can do that fucking Assassin's Creed Odyssey shit and just like smash into another ship and then send all your people in through the hole that you created in the side of it. And that personally, that's my style. That's the way that I would want to board ships. Create create the toughest goddamn starship anybody's ever seen and just ram holes in the side of other people's ships.
Anybody's ever seen.
Right. Number 3, the third way you can board ships. You could use things called breaching pods, which fly groups toward a target ship, kind of like a tracking weapon. When the breaching pod makes impact, its prow pierces a hole in the target and then allows the party within the breaching pod to board the ship from the pod. So you basically shoot a bullet at the ship that has a party inside of it.
Yeah, so like a drop ship more or less, but it's made to shoot at another ship to let
When it's made to pierce the other ship.
troops get inside of it. That's fucking cool.
Right. Mm-hmm. And number 4, and this is my favorite, a giant starship-sized space creature, of which there are some in this book, can inject pathogens into a starship. And from what I understand, these pathogens can sort of act like a boarding party. Now, I don't think this is boarding like in the traditional sense of what we're thinking of, but it is covered by the rules for boarding because like you could have a giant fucking space squid or something that pierces a ship with its tentacles and sends pathogens or little fucking squid monsters onto the ship to board it. Right, exactly.
Space kraken that then like launches a bunch of little babies inside.
Exactly. Impregnates you with a right. I just watched Slither with the Hideous Laughter crew, and like it's very much those kind of vibes.
Oh man.
So I will say there's a whole set of rules specific to boarding. You have to make a boarding attack, which is a D20 plus the boarding party's tier, plus the size of the party, plus any modifiers from special open crew actions that party members can take. And you compare that to an equally lengthy to describe boarding resistance. And I'm just saying it's number crunchy for my math nerds out there, but I'm not going to get into all the security systems and tactics and what happens with multiple boarding parties and all the minutia of that. But believe me, it's all in there. It's a whole fucking segment. And if I went into all that, we'd be here tomorrow.
So does it like
check it out?
Once you've boarded, does it like pause Starship combat? Say if the players are going, it pauses Starship combat, and then you've got
I think it pretty much says that.
Boarding pauses Starship combat, but then the way you go about the boarding, you have a couple of different options. You can either use skill checks to try to successfully complete your boarding, or you can choose to just go straight into combat and have your party that boarded go attack the party members on the ship you boarded. So you can kind of do it either way.
So it could be combat inception.
Right.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it could. Okay, so the second section of the chapter on Starship Combat is all about critical effects, particularly in Starship Combat. Considering that in the APA arc, I'm always the gunner as Titanium Mike, I realized when reading this, I have been taking for granted this entire time that I was the only crew member that got any real meaningful effects from rolling a natural 20. Have you guys thought about that? There's not a natural 20 effect for anyone but the gunner.
Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't thought about that until I read this book. And then I was like,
right.
Fucking A.
But fret no more, because the Starship Operations Manual adds a ton of critical effects for every single roll you could fill on a starship in Starfinder. So for the sake of brevity, I'll just give you guys a couple examples that stood out to me. So, your pilot stunts, right? Say you do a pilot stunt called Flyby. You line up your shot perfectly. The gunner gains a +2 circumstance bonus to the gunnery check affected by this stunt. So you roll a natural 20 to move your ship into a flyby position. You give your gunner a +2.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Okay. And then, there's an engineer action, divert, you're familiar with, Josh. So if you divert shields and roll a natural 20, you're now able to efficiently route energy to the shields, doubling the number of shield points restored to 10% of the PCU rating of the starship's power core.
Oh, nice.
If this would restore the shields over the max value, these excess shield points remain until the beginning of the next engineering phase, and then you lose them.
Okay.
So you get any excess you get to keep for 1 round as temporary HP.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. And there are a plethora of these critical effects. Literally everything that every roll could do now has a natural 20 critical effect. This is a game changer, guys. I can't emphasize this enough. The gunner was getting, extra damage off rolling natural 20s, but now your science officer, your magic officer, every action they could carry out, your captain, every action they could carry out, if they natural 20, there's an effect for it. There is a benefit for it. And that's the kind of thing, like, I think we take for granted, because in this kind of TTRPG, you just assume natural 20 means you get something special. That has not been the case in Starship Combat, and now it is.
Because in the past, they've just been handled like skill checks, more or less, that don't have a critical effect.
Which I think, again, ties to Adam's assessment that this is a completion of the rules as opposed to an addition. Like, this brings Starship Combat up to speed to where people kind of wanted it to be, from the very beginning. And I'm not trying to dunk on Paizo or anything, but it takes time with a game as expansive and huge and that has to take into account so many things as Starfinder. So I'm really excited because now the next time we do Starship Combat, we've got crits for everything. Yeah, any crit that's rolled, there's a new effect.
Crazy. It's going to be so much because you're going to have this upgraded ship with all these new options too. It's going to be fun.
So the third section of Starship Combat chapter is on Starship Chases, a new feature that I'm really excited about. This book makes a point to emphasize that the purpose of the rules for Starship Chases is to provide a more cinematic way to tell a story about starships interacting with one another, as opposed to direct Starship combat. So the rules for Starship Chases don't take place on a grid at all. It's a lot more theater of the mind, and to me it's a lot more of a mini game. So chases generally take place over 6 rounds, though a GM can adjust that as they see fit. Each round, an obstacle is presented, and the PCs select a single chase action for their starship and roll a skill check for it. After 6 rounds, the chase is either a success or a failure, depending on how many successful chase actions were rolled, or on how much damage the ship took. So essentially, it's a fun little mini-game to spice up an adventure, and it boils down to 6 or more rounds of the GM setting up obstacles in the party using all of their resources available through their starship rolls to take one action, a single action, to overcome said obstacle. So each obstacle that's presented, only one person can roll the check. So you have to, in the moment, decide who's going to be best suited to overcome this obstacle. Which of our crew members can do this the best. Okay. Right? There are tables for the kinds of obstacles that will be presented, and there's a healthy amount of them. There's environmental effects and Starship Chase specific skills, as well as suggestions for how to design your own Starship Chase. I know I breezed through that super fast, but I think it's super cool. Now you have a way to basically, if you want to have that pod racer scene, right? You can do that.
Or, trying to escape a couple fighters on your tail.
Right. Instead of just having to turn around and shoot them out of the sky.
Right. Or just doing Starship Combat where I move, they move. I move, they move.
Yeah.
Right. Well, or on the flip side, having someone's trying to get away from you. So somebody, stole a valuable artifact and you have to track it down because it's your job, or it's something that's too dangerous to be in the hands of criminals. Well, they're just going to try to flee the entire time. They're not going to turn around and fight you, right?
Right.
So now there's a fun mini game for how to make that go about. And I think the fact that it's 6 rounds or so is perfect, is sweet and quick and to the point and exciting and like they said, cinematic. You want to be describing what this looks like the whole time, because it's much more about the drama and the adventure than it is about actually playing the much more in-depth game of Starship Combat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, more or less an analog to the vehicle chases that were already there.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so the next section in Chapter 2 is simply called Additional Starship Options. And with this section, I felt like Paizo, they were kind of covering a lot of their bases as far as things that are common in sci-fi, but hadn't yet been specifically addressed in Starfinder as a system. First, there's a section on where on a typical ship each type of crew member would likely be located in the case of a disaster or a mutiny or someone boarding your ship, right? It just provides you options for in the fiction of this thing, if your ship got boarded by pirates, you need to know exactly where everyone's located, because you can't take for granted that if you're on a 6-day journey, everybody's not just staying in the bridge for that whole 6 days, right?
Right.
So that seems like a pretty basic thing, but it's still important to have it as a guideline and as a rule that these are the places most likely for people to be, unless they specifically say otherwise, right? Like Mike being in the gym. So probably the coolest thing in this section is that they addressed orbital drops. So and I think Josh already brought up drop ships earlier.
Yep.
So you can drop troops or equipment onto the surface of a planet or an asteroid or whatever without doing an obvious flyby. They added drop pods as a purchasable item that you can use to make orbital drops safer. The personal drop pods are really cool because they are single-use armor upgrades that let you just literally yeet yourself down to a planet in your armor.
ODST.
Like that's literally, you can straight up do that. And there's an awesome picture in the book of a character in this black and red armor diving head first at the ground.
Oh no.
Right?
So I was thinking it was similar to like the Halo ODST, like a pod. But no, it's an actual armor upgrade. Like somebody doing like a Halo jump.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. There are the pods that are separate from the armor upgrade version.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So it's both then.
So there are pods that you can have a couple of people in or whatever, and they technically are safer, you know, but you can install the armor upgrade, which is a single use, and individually yeet yourself off a ship and fly down to, or drop down to the surface of a planet. They also added rules, and this is important if you're going to be yeeting yourself off a ship to a planet, for the actual damage that you would take upon atmospheric reentry.
Oh, man.
Like, they actually have the rules for that. The damage that you take from bludgeoning, from falling, and the damage you take from heat.
Oh, wow.
I'm not going to get into the specifics, but it's super neat that it's there, and it's super deadly. So that little chunk leads us to the next section of the Starship Combat chapter, which is titled Starships in Atmosphere, which takes into account things like atmospheric friction, weather events you may run into, as well as the effects of toxic atmospheres. And all of that's very cool stuff that prior to this book would have just been flavor or like homebrewed rules.
Yeah.
Right? But not anymore. I love that, like the Starship Chases, these rules encourage players and GMs to have Starship combats, or just more Starship interactions in new and in different ways. Starship combats don't have to be in space. They can be on Akaton or Triaxis with the last rays of the Burning Mother creeping below the mountains as you fire your laser cannons on an enemy ship fleeing a metropolis. There are just more options and possibilities supported by the rules of the game now. And I, for one, am all about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Here.
that's something I was wondering about, early on when we were playing is like, how would you handle atmospheric combat? Because it should happen, Right. Well, and we had above Nakandis. Remember, we had a combat that was above the mountains in Nakandis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all of these rules weren't in place at the time.
Yeah, there could have been some like fog stuff, some visibility stuff because of the fog that
the egg fart fog could have been toxic.
For real,
right?
Really.
Could have deteriorated our ship.
Well, also, and it's like, I think you can also use those atmospheric effects, like even in non-combat, because we have episodes where we spend the RP on the starship. And that could be like something that you could introduce in the travel, right?
Right.
As, like an electric storm or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And like that's something that you would have to deal with on the ship as part of the like travels and all that kind of stuff. It's just a different kind of encounter, that's not necessarily starship combat.
And it's more drama, it's the potential for more drama in your adventure.
Right.
And any way we can spice up a 6-day trip in the drift or whatever is good for the game, I think.
Or a 6-day trip through hell.
Right.
Through hell, yeah. Through just hell. Because that's a thing now. Okay. I've got to say, guys, now we're getting into the good stuff, okay? I know that the good folks at Paizo, as well as those like me who heard about these next couple of features during PaizoCon Online, were very excited about. And can I ask for a drum roll, please? Right. Squadron combat and armada combat.
Nice.
Yeah. We have moved to that phase of Starfinder, and I can't be more excited about it. So first, let's talk about squadron combat, right? This provides an alternative to the tried and true Starfinder system of having the party operate as the crew of a single starship. Instead, you're now offered the option to have each party member pilot individual smaller starships. Now, I know this is going to be a big hit with people like me and Josh, who are massive Battlestar Galactica fans.
Yeah, dude.
Or more generally with your Star Wars fans that want to see TIE fighters and stuff like that work in tandem. who, between those two fandoms, I can't help but imagine comprise probably a solid 100% of our viewership, of our listenership, and probably as high as 98% of Starfinder fans in general. But this system comes with some benefits as well as some drawbacks, right? Compared to a single larger starship crewed by a party working together, squadrons, being that they're composed of many smaller starships, obviously give up some firepower, right? Like, you're not going to be able to do the massive kind of damage off a single shot that you would with a larger starship.
You're in a fighter. Mm-hmm. But that's why you fly in groups, in squadrons.
Exactly. And that's why the next comment is, however, their ability to move and attack independently allows a squadron a different approach to combat, which emphasizes teamwork and strategy. So obviously the first aspect we have to look at is building a squadron. So there's a whole set of rules for how to do this. But for the sake of brevity, again, we can look at the basics, which are broken into 4 phases. First, you would conceptualize, meaning you would decide how many starships are in the squadron and which party members are most likely to operate these smaller ships. Then you want to determine the squadron tier and assign starship tiers. The squadron's tier is equal to the average level of the party, so you total the PC's level and divide by the number of PCs, and they've obviously got a very handy table to make this easier. Next, you will build your starships. The PCs design their own ships based on the design rules in the core rulebook. Squadron starships are almost always medium-sized or smaller, and even tiny ships have space for an escape pod. So even if you are on the tiniest possible starship, you do have an escape pod, so you're not completely screwed if your starship gets blown up.
I mean, yeah, man, you got to have an ejection seat.
Exactly. Well, I'd imagine for a tiny starship, that's all it is an ejection seat.
Or like a little pod that comes out with it because, atmosphere and whatnot, or lack of.
And one thing I do like is that they give you so much flexibility in how to build your starships, even if you're in a squadron. I think we tend to imagine squadrons, especially if you're a Battlestar Galactica or a Star Wars fan, as all being uniform, as being the exact same version of
same
the
models.
ship, the same models, right? Yeah. And they don't require that at all. You can have 6 or 7 completely different ships of different sizes, from tiny to medium. They could all be different sizes and still work together in a squadron with no ill effects.
That's cool. So I guess that could cover, if you've got like a heavy gunship or something that moves slower, you can have a fighter escort or something like that.
Exactly. Well, I mean, think of it as just an extension of your party, right? You could have a ship that represents your tank or your big dick swinging DPS, and you could have a couple of rogues.
It's more like a Destiny ship type situation, right? Like in the loading screens of Destiny, everybody's got their different style ships. Yeah.
Finally, after you've conceptualized and you've built your starships, your squadron of starships, you can, and this, I think this is very cool, you can build an optional squadron headquarters. So basically, you can take some hits to the number of build points you would normally get for a ship of equivalent size to build a headquarters ship that allows all of your squadron ships to dock and have a centralized base.
Dude.
That's so
Dude. So you won't have all of the amenities that like a Epic Tracer would have, right? You won't necessarily have your training gym or your hollow suite or whatever, but you would have enough space to like have everybody their own quarters and everything with all their ships docked into the centralized hub. And at a moment's notice, like in Battlestar Galactica, go and jump in your fucking ships and go on squadron detail.
Yeah.
Dude, that's so cool.
Yeah, I think it's fucking. It's like my sci-fi boner. Like there's only so erect that I can get. Like.
You're gonna have to see a doctor after a few more hours.
Right. Squadrons also provide new options for each starship pilot, including more pilot stunts and starship upgrades that emphasize and enhance the teamwork of the whole thing. Right. So we'll look at a few of those in a minute, but first we'll look at how to address the roles available to squadron pilots and how they function. So at the start of each round of combat, each character declares which role they want to assume for their starship. Now, these roles function much as they would on a normal starship, except that each squadron starship pilot assumes all of the starship roles for their ship, with the exception of the captain role. So, obviously, it being a small, single-person ship, If you want to do engineering shit, you got to do it. If you want to do gunnery, like, you have to do it. So being that you're in a squad, a squadron of ships, that's part of the gamesmanship. It's like, who is, you want to have a couple people be gunners in an encounter, and then one person be, scanning the enemy ships, and one person doing all these other things while you're flying your ship.
To go back to the Battlestar thing, having a Raptor with Viper escorts, basically a science vessel doing all the scans and stuff for the group, and then have all the fighters flying around it.
Yeah. So it's important that they say, with the exception of the captain role, only one character in the squadron can be the captain, because the captain counts not only as the captain of his or her own ship, but of all ships in the squadron. So you have a squadron leader. But the squad captain can affect any of the squadron's crew with their captain actions. And they have the option, instead of having their own starship, a squad captain can choose to remain at the headquarters during combat and take all of their actions to coordinate with the rest of the squad and be like a manager. If the squad captain chooses to go this route, it limits her ability to take on other roles during combat. So if you have a captain who chooses to stay behind at the headquarters, all they can do is captain, right?
Right.
Now you may be asking, well, why the fuck would you do that instead of just having the option to do all of it? The benefit of being a squad captain from afar is that having less pilots in a squadron increases the tier of all starships in the squadron.
Oh.
So if the captain stays behind and just focuses on captaining, every single other ship in the squadron is one tier more powerful.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Okay, so back to the new options provided to squadron pilots. First, you have new stunts. The escort stunt allows you to provide a +2 bonus to an adjacent ally's starship's AC and target lock until the start of your next round if you succeed a piloting check. On a failed check, your starship moves normally. If you fail by 5 or more, you actually interfere with the starship's movement, and the allied starship takes a -2 to AC and TL until the next round. So if you try to fucking escort somebody and suck at it, you get in their way.
Damn. Don't suck at escorting. You
Right.
got one job.
Then you have the flank stun option, and I think you can kind of suss out what that's going to be. Mm-hmm. But you choose an enemy starship, your starship moves up to its speed and can turn as normal. If your starship ends the helm phase within 5 hexes of the chosen starship, the next attack against that starship made during that round and originating from an arc not occupied by your ship gains a +2 bonus to its gunnery check. So the cool thing is, flanking with starships basically means you don't have to be on the opposite side of them. You can be in a different arc. Just be in any different arc.
Cool. Nice.
Within 5 hexes. So basically be in an adjacent arc. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you give them a +2 to gunnery. So now you can flank with fucking squadron. That's finally, awesome. And this is the last of the bonus options for starship pilots. You have run interference. You choose one tracking projectile, like a missile. Your starship moves up to its speed and can turn normally. If it moves through a hex occupied by the projectile, so you got to go through the actual projectile square or hex, the starship attempts to interfere with the projectile's tracking system, causing it to veer off course and take a -4 penalty to its next gunnery check to continue moving toward its target. If you succeed at a piloting check with a circumstance bonus equal to the TL granted by your starship's defensive countermeasures. I'm sorry, I know that's a mouthful. If you succeed by 5 or more, you cause the projectile to detonate harmlessly, destroying it. If you fail, your starship moves normally but doesn't penalize the weapon. If you fail by 5 or more, the tracking projectile immediately attacks you.
Oops.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So it's like fly in front of a missile to try and distract it, get it to go off target, and if you don't do it right, it can then lock onto you.
It can blow you up. Yeah, exactly. There's also 2 minor crew actions added to squadron combat. In the gunnery phase, you can now use harrying shot.
Nice.
Okay.
So we know what harrying shot is, right? Mm-hmm. You help somebody else out. Basically, but harrying shot with a starship means that they get to roll their gunnery check twice and take the better result.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then second is in the engineering phase, you can use swift kick to force a failing system to ignore recent damage allowing it to treat the system's critical condition as though it were one step less severe.
I like the imagery of that.
Yeah.
And
You
that,
just
like,
kick your
radar is not working
Starship.
quite right, and you just
Yeah.
Kick
bash
the
it
fuck
real
out of
quick.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's almost it for squadron combat, other than some systems that can be purchased for squadrons with build points. I'm going to breeze through a few of these, as cool as they are, because there's one in particular I think the community will be really, really, really excited about. So first, there's the data link system. This allows for the rapid exchange of information between squadron members up to 20 hexes away, including the results of scanning an enemy ship. So the data link is kind of the core of all of these, right? A data link is going to pair with other ones. If you pair the data link with an auto flight module system, the data link allows ships to fly in formation with little to no effort. So one guy can be piloting the whole squadron, pretty much.
Oh, that's
leaving everybody else free to do all the other actions and stuff. And as a group of small ships, kind of function like a larger one.
Exactly, yes.
That's
If
cool.
paired with the focus fire algorithm system, the data link allows a primary gunner to boost the damage output of all the secondary gunners in a squadron. So you pick a gun leader, pretty much.
Damn.
And if he lands, he gives bonuses to other gunners.
That's cool. I feel like I've said that too many times.
Yeah, well, it's the Weldy episode. Absolutely undeniably, the coolest squadron system is the unification matrix. Either you guys ever watch Voltron?
Yep.
Y'all.
Yep. Well, now you can live out your Voltron power fantasy by having the unification matrix combine all of your ships in a squadron into a huge fused Voltron starship. How fucking
so
cool is that?
That's amazing.
Like, you can literally, like, fly 5 or 6 in formation and then do the, like, Voltron or Power Rangers thing. And for each combat, you can combine once and break apart once. They were very vague on how they represented that. They were like, you can combine all your ships into one larger ship. They said nothing at all about shape.
Yeah, like I think that's the point is like, here's just like the rules to apply to whatever crazy shit you come up with, you know, like.
Right. But I'm saying they intentionally did that. So if you want to turn your ship into a giant, you know, humanoid looking mech, like, you got it.
Well, I want to turn my squad into a giant space snail.
Space snail. You could do it. Okay, and lastly, I'm sorry, I know this is taking up a lot. I said I was going to zoom through it, and I'm doing my best. Lastly, we have Armada combat. And if the possibility of fusing all your fighter ships into a giant Voltron death machine wasn't cool enough for you, the last section of Starship Combat chapter is on Armada combat. That's right, we've finally got rules allowing Starfinder players not only to captain and crew their own starship and squadron, but an entire fleet of ships within an armada in giant space battles. So, how does armada combat work? You may be asking. Basically, an armada is made up of fleets. Building an armada starts with building its fleets. In terms of gamesmanship, I kind of think of an armada as a party and the fleets as the members of the party. Just way bigger.
Yeah.
So there are 3 different classes of fleets. The Capital Fleet is a single immense starship with heavy armor and devastating weapons that are slower to maneuver and have a tough time fending off tiny attackers, right? So big boy. Big beefy boy. The Destroyer Fleet is a handful of large starships and balances firepower and armor with maneuverability and versatility. They use mid-sized weapons and are good at eliminating lots of smaller enemies. Seeing enemies. The Fighter Fleet is a dozen or more medium or smaller ships specializing in speed and agility, whose numbers can quickly overwhelm targets. When building any of these classes of fleets, you can spend build points on special abilities, and there's a table listing all of these abilities in the book. Some examples are like EMP and electromagnetic pulse, gravity mines, and even super weapons. Your fucking like Death Star laser.
Yeah.
So, in Armada combat, the player characters act as officers who direct their fleets and fill specific roles that influence encounters with their associated skills, officer bonuses, and special abilities. These roles are roughly equivalent to the roles available to player characters in normal Starship combat. There is the Admiral. The Admiral directs the overall flow of combat. Associated skills are Bluff, Diplomacy, and Intimidate. Their officer bonus is to morale checks. And they can encourage, rally, and taunt. So they're kind of your envoy.
Your captain of the fleet.
Yeah. Right.
Or the armada, rather.
Right. Then there's the Chief Caster, who oversees the mystical rites of the fleet, associated skill Mysticism. The Chief Caster's officer bonus is to AC against enemy gunnery checks.
Okay.
So they boost the whole fleet's AC.
Nice.
They've got some fun special abilities like Conjure, Enchant, and Precognition. You heard that right, Conjure. They can just conjure a fucking ship-sized creature.
Okay.
There's the Chief Engineer, who oversees repairs and makes the decisions whether to exceed Starship's recommended performance limits. This is like Fell's dream job.
Mm-hmm.
Their officer bonus is to shield points, and they can boost or they can repair. The Chief Technician oversees the fleet's computers and scientists while they hack and scan enemy systems. Their skill is computers. Their officer bonus is to gunnery. And in combat, the Chief Technician can scan, scramble, or target. And finally, there is the Commander, who oversees a fleet directly, ensuring the optimal performance of its crew members. This is the, like, hands-on, actually talking to people guy. And because of that, they have the associated skills of Diplomacy, Intimidation, or Piloting. And grant an officer bonus to all your piloting checks. In combat, they can use the direct action or the dual action. Armada combat functions in many ways like Starship combat, just on a larger scale and with new abilities, consisting of 3 phases. It's still engineering, helm, and gunnery. However, an added wrinkle when in Armada combat is morale. So when a fleet is reduced to half its maximum HP, it must attempt a morale check. If you beat it by 5 or more, the fleet is emboldened and gets a +1 to all checks until the end of the next round. If you fail by 4 or less, the fleet is shaken and takes a -1 to all checks until the end of the next round. But if you fail by 5 or more, the fleet is routed and attempts to flee combat by the safest route possible. Now, I thought this was a great mechanic, as terrifying as it is, because a routed fleet they can still make attacks, but they have to continue to flee the combat. They make their attacks at a -2. Until they're either successfully rallied by an admiral, or until they've fled for 3 rounds, at which point the fleet is disabled.
Dang.
They can't do shit.
Wow.
Now, this is the kicker. This is what's absolutely terrifying to me. When a fleet is routed, any allied fleets within 2 hexes that have half of their HP or fewer remaining must also attempt a morale check with a DC equal to the routed fleet's AC. So one routed ship can potentially set off a chain reaction of moral checks and set up a line of dominoes, taking fleet after fleet after fleet out of the fight and disabling them.
Wow. I mean, it makes sense, though. I mean, if you've got guys who are just like, we can't do this, we can't win this, when they turn and run, the ones near them are going to be like, oh, well, shit, they're running,
we should go. Right.
We're probably not going to make it.
That mechanic is very much like the realistic, like warfare, morale kind of thing. Like if you see enough people saying this is an unwinnable battle and tuck and tail, brave men that you've been fighting next to, that's going to affect your psyche. It's going to affect your morale. And that's a devastating mechanic. If you roll poorly 2, 3, 4 times in a row, you can lose a battle.
Yeah. Well, an Armada level combat, you imagine it's going to be a pretty dramatic situation. So, to have those kind of stakes kind of helps enforce that,
Yeah. I just like that the system is actually expanding to that size or to that scale, instead of just being, a small group of, explorers or adventurers or what have you, to actually envelop the idea of fleets or more than just fleets, because the fleets are the individual units, actual armadas fighting against each other, entire navies, more or less. Just, that's insane to me. It's wonderful, but it's just so large that I love that that's actually being represented now.
Yeah. It just, as you said, it gives you that ability to expand your story if it gets there. You know, we're in a setting where there are starships, where there are organized militaries, where there are universe level threats, you know, like
or where there are like galaxy wide governments like the Vesk, you know, in militaries.
Yeah, or some outside threat, some abomination type things come in, and there are thousands of them.
Yeah,
you know, and everybody rallies together to fight them off. Like that's really cool.
Well, and that's, to your point, like that's what I love about this, is that it does make it so much bigger, because, and I don't think it's any coincidence that this book came out as we're just a few months away from the Devastation arc.
Yeah.
Right? And I guarantee you, Devastation arc being the first game that goes to level 20, we're getting into this kind of shit, right? And I can't wait for it. But I like that it makes it that big, and that we're finally, I mean, it's been what, 2.5, 3 years since Starfinder came out, and we're just now building to that kind of crescendo. I'm glad we are, because it feels like, or has felt like, up until this point, Starfinder has always been about a small, scrappy, plucky band of rebels or outcasts, right? It's never been about major galactic political struggle, and now it can be.
Now it is. Like, now the world is, you know. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely expanded it into a whole...
Well, from like tabletop into full-on wargaming.
Yeah, like, well, absolutely. I mean, there's large-scale war, there's all sorts of different customization to your starship. There's things that you can do outside of combat that's introduced into this, with this book, you know. It just completely emboldens the role of the starship in Starfinder. You know what I mean? Like, and it attaches that starship finally full whole to the game. You know, like, it's not just an ancillary thing anymore.
Right. Well, and to just be as basic as we can, like, it makes the game big, right? Like, the benefit of sci-fi is that it's bigger than just a single planet-based fantasy game that's usually based in just a few countries. Now, like, we kind of finally can get to where, like, oh, it matters that we're hopping between all these different planets, and we can affect things politically, and we could accidentally trigger a giant war between two galactic navies,
right.
You know? Right. And now there's mechanics for that. It's fucking dope.
Yeah.
It's dope. Okay. We're going to move on to Chapter 3, and we're going to be real quick about Chapter 3, because Chapter 3 is simply titled Starships. So, like, it's humongous, but it's also not.
Well, I feel like this is the chapter that when somebody picks up a book that they're going to go to first.
They're immediately going to flip to this.
It's the one that has all the pretty pictures.
Yeah, it's all the pre-built starships, and you get, like, all the good artwork of it. And you just kind of see all the work of all the nitty-gritty that's in the other chapters, you know?
Right, exactly. So this chapter and this book in general, rather appropriately, are chock full of amazing new starships, art, and stat blocks. And this chapter actually has art and stat blocks for at least 2 or 3 starships at every single tier of starship, from 1/3 all the way up to the super colossal, as I said earlier, world ships and world enders at tier 20. Yeah. But before you get to all of this amazing new starship art, there's a new feature that I know John was really excited about, and that I think is pretty cool too. And that feature is there's a whole list of new starship manufacturers, right? And this ties in so much lore that we didn't have prior. And like every starship in the fucking galaxy, unless it was built at home, has a company that potentially made it and that has their own set of lore around it, and provides unique perks to parties who rep those products, right? So I think that's very cool. That's such an interesting way to expand lore, not through individuals, but through organizations and companies that make the ships. So obviously, so much of this chapter is pictures and stat blocks of starships that we're not really going to get into that. Like, get the book, get the PDF, whatever, and go and check out all those ships. They're amazing. I've got my favorites. I'm sure we all do, but this is not a visual medium, right? So to not just completely gloss over this chapter, what I'm going to do is take a minute to read from the Starship Operations Manual about one of these manufacturers to show off how much thought went into the lore surrounding it and to give you guys an example of one of the manufacturer perks. So I wanted to talk about a manufacturer called the Star Hive. Their motto is standing against the swarm. They've got sitters on Akaton and N'Chak, wherever N'Chak is. They specialize in Shirin fighting ships, and they have famous models called the Drone, Raptor, and Vespiar. The Star Hive formed about 100 years after Shirins first arrived in the Pact Worlds, splitting away from another manufacturer called Hivonics Industries, because of a fundamental difference of philosophy. Many Shirins feared the swarm would find its way to the Pact Worlds, and they wanted to be ready for armed resistance. They felt that unarmed starships were fine for merchants and explorers, but that it would take heavy weaponry to stop the swarm. But Hivonics leaders maintained the company's pacifist stance, so a large group of Shirin employees split off to form Starhive and make battle-ready starships. The first Starhive shipyard was founded on Akaton, though the company almost went under before establishing its own supply chain on the planet. Akatonian businesses aren't always friendly to competitors, and existing starship manufacturers leaned hard on their suppliers not to sell to the new company. A few supply chain managers at Hivonics, sympathetic to Starhive's cause, helped out their former employees with contracts on other planets. This proved more expensive than shopping local, but Starhive was able to get started and begin building Shirin battleships. 60 years later, company leaders began negotiating with the Trox of N'Chak, a Leovaran moon. Even as devout Hylaxians, the Trox took the threat of the swarm very seriously and agreed on the need for warships capable of fighting it. Starhive added a second location on N'Chak to coordinate with Trox engineers on new starship technology. The company eventually expanded beyond warships to freighters and passenger vehicles, starting with the drone Mk-1, which quickly became Starhive's best-selling ship. Starhive ships are insectile in appearance, much like Hivonics's, but Starhive designs are immediately recognizable for their aggressive shapes, including heavy shells, stinger-like tails, and frills of spikes. The company is also known for impressive paint jobs using proprietary iridescent paint that mimics an insect's shell. Starhive ensures that no two ships have identical appearance, even in its best-selling lines. Starhive has come under scrutiny lately. Several Hivonics ships have been discovered outfitted with heavy weaponry, and evidence suggests Starhive is responsible for these conversions. Hivonics is furious at this apparent subversion of its peaceful mission, but Starhive insists it is being framed and is working to prove its innocence before Hivonics seeks legal recourse. This complicated scheme has all the markings of corporate sabotage, probably masterminded by one of Starhive's Akatonian rivals, such as Sanjival Spaceflight Systems. Like, how cool is that lore for a manufacturer of starships? And how easily could you create a whole fucking campaign based on that?
I mean, there's some of that in Attack of the Swarm. Like, some of that is familiar.
Right.
You know?
Well, and I picked it because I thought you would appreciate the closeness to Attack of the Swarm. But, I mean, like, there are 31 of these manufacturers, and all of them have deep lore like this.
That's intense.
And, I mean, you could build whole adventures, whole modules, whole campaigns. Yeah. Just based on that.
Yeah, and just going through these real quick, the one that Fell probably has worked on, I'm not going to go into the full background of it, but it's essentially Honda, and it's made on Verces. It's the Ringworks Industries. Their specialty is accessible designs for those who can't otherwise afford Versite-level luxury.
There you go.
Well, I did notice because of the lore of Verces, like 7 or 8 of the manufacturers are based in Verces.
That makes sense, too.
You know? They're tech capital, tech center of the Pack Worlds,
right.
You know.
I gave you all that lore and it's super cool, but I did want to add the manufacturer's perk, right? Because almost all of these, there's like 6 or 7 of the base ones that don't have manufacturer perks, but most of them do. And the Starhive manufacturer perk says, Starhive designers know the importance of sufficient power on a warship. Starhive starships can install a power core housing for a second power core for only 8 BP instead of 10.
That's cool.
8 build points. Yeah. So they're little perks that usually have to do with outfitting your ship and saving you a little money or boosting a little power. Yeah. But every single one of these, 30 plus manufacturers have their own perks, their own flavor, their own style, and their own lore. Mm-hmm. Like that. This is absolutely not something they had to include.
Yeah, no.
It's,
this is not necessary.
But it's welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's amazing that they have that level of detail, right? So I know we're going super long, but we're dude, it's a book. So that's all I wanted to do with chapter 3, although there is 10 times that amount of information. Nope, at least 31 times that amount of information in chapter 3. But we're going to move on to let Adam do his thing and tell us about chapter 4.
Okay, so chapter 4 is kind of the GM's chapter of the book. And honestly, if you are a GM of Starfinder or interested in GMing Starfinder and really are drawn to the Starship stuff, I would recommend reading this chapter first before reading the other chapters, because this entire section of the Starship Operations Manual is dedicated to adventure ideas and encounters. It basically goes through every stage of Starship related gaming that a GM would have to deal with. So it starts with building a Starship scale creature. So it tells you how to make something that's a creature that's big enough to take on a starship. It gives you all the rules and necessary building parameters to do that and to keep it balanced and keep it to scale with your party. And then it moves up to talk about space hazards, and that kind of goes back to those environmental things, those atmospheric things that we're talking about. It talks about using those to influence your travel in Starship most of this chapter is about expanding the flavor in your game and really bringing a Starship into a cinematic experience. And it's not just combat. It's anytime you're on a Starship, it should get a little bit more epic because you're on a Starship. It's a bigger thing, that expansion that we're talking about. And so the narrative, it's all these different ways to increase the narrative. So it starts with creatures that you might encounter, and then space hazards, which are kind of a bigger thing, and talks about some stellar phenomenon like asteroids and gravity fields and radiation and how those might combine to create fire asteroids and all these different things that you can throw in their way that are almost like Starship traps, that you have to deal with as a Starship. And then it goes on to designing Starship encounters. And it talks about, and this is something that we've done for the podcast, I think ourselves. We talked about it before we even started, about we wanted to make the Starship combat episodes as cinematic as possible. And that's the first paragraph of designing Starship encounters. Cinematic Starship encounters. It's the first heading there, And it says, ideally, that these encounters are cinematic and exciting experiences. But a number of potential pitfalls to running Starship encounters could undermine this goal. So I think what Paizo is doing here is recognizing that some of the rules and the mechanics of the game could easily grind some of that experience to a halt. And it's reminding your GM and giving you tips on how to do this, to keep it exciting, and one of the things that we do that's kind of mentioned and alluded to is that try to describe the action in more than just the numbers on the die. One thing that we try to do is at the end of each round, kind of sum up the round in a cinematic description to say, this is kind of what happened, Now we've rolled all the dice, kind of figured out the numbers, and then this is the result of this turn of Starship combat, and it talks about doing that. It talks about bringing the environment into the storytelling and adding hazards and terrain to space to make the space combat feel a little bit more alive and
lived in,
less empty. Yeah.
Right.
I do think that starting with that is very valuable because, as we've mentioned, like Starship Combat kind of caught a lot of backlash, or a lot of people just not caring about it or caring for it as an obstacle to get to the rest of the game when it first came out. And I do think it behooves Paizo to remind people, like, a big part of that is mentality. It's like you wanting to make it cinematic and you wanting to engage in it in a way that doesn't view it as something that's in the way of my enjoyment of the rest of the game.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, like, I think this goes back to the completing of Starship Combat rules with this. Is like, this is the type of stuff that you know that they wanted to include in the core rule book. You know what I mean? But
it would have been a 400-page book.
Well, you know, I mean, at least another 30 pages, because most of this chapter is, you know, it's not a whole lot of mechanics. You know, it's a lot of GM advice about how they envision Starship Combat to run, you know, and like how you can take that and elevate it and make it just as fun as the ground combat or non-combat encounters, which a big part of this book is them talking about some non-combat challenges, you know, so navigating through an asteroid field or scanning a ship caught in orbit. You know, we've done some of that. We did that on Hacky Sack Heroes. Emily did that just kind of naturally, you know, and then it has like a whole section about injecting excitement into the game, enhanced gameplay descriptions, create memorable villains on the comms, you know, like all those things are now articulated and laid out for a GM. And so if you are wondering how to approach Starship Combat, this chapter is so beneficial. You know, like it really just kind of lays out the flavor of it, which is so important to making Starship Combat fun. Like, I know that pretty much all of us enjoy doing Starship Combat as a podcast. You know what I mean? Like, despite the idea that Starship Combat can be crunchy and a little drag. But I think we figured out a way to make it fun, and a lot of that is reflected here in this chapter, you know, and I like what I'm saying is I agree with all the advice that's laid out here, because I think that really makes a difference in your enjoyment of this more than a mini game, this whole other game that's within Starfinder.
Right. Well, and I kind of hear what you're saying with, to some degree, I think we've done pretty well about trying to, for the most part, make Starship Combat engaging and fun and everything. But that's why I still think it was a good move on their part, and behooves them to, like, make a note and point out that, like, hey man, like, Starship Combat is much more than just the rules,
right.
You know? Right.
Like, don't let the mechanics get in the way of what the intent of this is supposed to be. You know what I mean? This is supposed to be just as much of a fantasy fulfillment as the rest of the game. It's not meant to be a chore. And these are the ways that you can make it feel like that. You feel good about doing it. And so, you know, that's the big part of designing Starship encounters, right? And then it talks about, it again, brings the scale up and gives you a couple Starship adventure seeds, which this is really cool. Like, basically, it gives you a one-book adventure nugget that you could extrapolate as a homebrew GM. Like, you could just kind of take this idea and then build it out how you want. For example, like, there's one in there called Secure the Assets, you know? And so these seeds involve the PCs using their starship or another they've acquired to chase down valuable research, right? So basically you're MacGuffin. Yeah,
MacGuffin chaser.
And it gives you several different potential ways to do that, you know? Oh, there's a looming bioweapon. Oh, there's particular schematics that hold the key to something, or there's starship bandits on the loose, whatever. It gives you like this little outline of how to just do, if you wanted to do a starship focused adventure where you're on the starship most of the time, and like, this is what you're going to be doing. And then it even takes it a step further, and there's like several of those, right? So there's several seeds, something like 12 different seeds to give you an idea for. And then they talk about some Starship campaign, like arcs. Like, if you're really wanting to do the Star Trek style campaign where,
or Battlestar
or
Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica, where your starship is where you're spending the most of your time and where most of the drama is. They have entire campaign arcs like laid out for you. Yeah, like separated into like books, even, you know, like Lost in the Vast is one, right? So in this campaign, the PCs are far away from the Pact Worlds, and critically, they can't just hop to the nearest drift beacon. That's kind of like the setup, and it gives you like big kind of climax moments to build to. You know, there's 3 climax moments within the Lost in the Vast campaign idea. Accidents happen. Just another day in the Vast. Time runs short. Like just those headings, like
those are practically Battlestar Galactica episode titles.
I mean, Red Stars at Night. Tell me that's not a BSG episode title.
Right. You know, the infiltration race, down on their luck, invasion. You know, like full campaign arc nuggets that you can just extrapolate into your whole own homebrew. And this is why I think it's important that you read this chapter first, because you read this and get the nugget of your concept. And then when you start going to reading the mechanics, you're like, oh, I can use this to do this. And like, it'll all come together for you. Like the combination of having this GM section in the same book as all these new rules is really awesome, because it puts it through a lens of like everything that's in this book, every rule that's in this book is an idea for an adventure. You know, like it's cool enough to be like, ooh, I could center some story around that. You know, we could tell a story about that. You know, any of the starships that are designed in here that they give you in chapter 3, you know, being able to do squadron style stuff. You could build a whole campaign around a squadron. Right.
Well, and you could tie in elements like you could take lore from the manufacturers section to build that kind of campaign. Right. That's one thing I think is so cool about it, is that they've given you an outline for like not only how to make adventures, but to make whole campaigns, and all the way down to like, I know there have been times where like before we started the podcast, you and I just ran a Starship combat, right? Just to get the rules down. But there's now a way to like make that a little like one shot or a Starfinder Society type adventure. Even if your whole purpose was just to practice Starship combat, right? Like you could make it an actual little one shot, you know,
and give it some good flavor instead of we're just practicing, you know?
I mean, it's given me all sorts of ideas of things that I could add into Apollo Protection Agency or stuff I could do in future campaigns, you know, like whatever we do after that. Like there's just so much here, you know, like, and I'm definitely going to suggest that Emily read this chapter for her to give her ideas for Hacky Sack Heroes. It's just so.
Considering she's actually doing homebrew, this will be great.
It really is. Like it's like, here's how you design scenarios to where all these cool things that we're presenting in the rest of the book can be showcased. It's just really great, you know, really synergetic.
I really hope that this aspect of the game gets recognized and doesn't get swept under the rug. And I can't wait until, you know, it may take a little while for people to catch on or whatever, but if like a year from now, there's a new podcast, a new Starfinder podcast that is specifically like the Starship combat, like Battlestar Galactica, like we are on a Star Trek type vessel for the entirety of the campaign and have all the like personal intrigue and political intrigue and stuff all occurring on one like large ship. Like I would listen to that in a heartbeat, you know, if well done. And now there's a way. Now there's a way to do it.
All right. Well, we still have listener questions to do, Heath.
Oh boy.
This one comes from Old Scratch, Brian. He says, what would the names of your individual starships be, either for your characters or your personal ships?
Mine would either be the Intimidator or the toughest goddamn starship anyone's ever seen.
Oh,
man, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to fail you on this question, Old Scratch, but Let's just say that my ship will be called Lemonade.
Lemonade?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, man.
It's just a Beyonce album title.
Well, you could do way worse, you know.
Oh, Fel would probably name his the Fantastic Counterpart.
Okay.
Okay. And he would be on a fantastic voyage in the Fantastic Counterpart.
But no, I'm thinking like, data link hooking into it, and it would be an extension of him, a better extension of him.
Yeah.
All right. Next question from Little Pink Fox. Marry, fuck, kill.
Oh, good.
This is for Josh.
Oh, man.
We're starting out hot.
Octopus, cuttlefish, squid.
Jesus Christ.
All I can say is you've brought this upon yourself, my friend.
It's Fel. It's not me.
Okay. So for Fel.
Man. Yes. Yes to all of them.
Yeah, that's the perfect answer.
Okay. There you go. All right. So an actual Starship combat question here from Commodore. When you imagine Starship combat, do you prefer dogfights like Star Wars or submarine warfare like Star Trek?
I'm 100% about dogfights.
Yeah.
I grew up playing like World War II flight sims, and the idea or there's a certain air about a dogfight and the kind of chivalry and rules and decorum that goes around, a close, intimate fight versus largely crewed battleships just blasting away at each other. It's a lot more interesting to me to have the, personal skill versus large crews.
What about you, Heath?
With all of the new options that we're going over in the Starship Operations Manual, like my ideal circumstance is that the easy answer is both. Like I would love for there to be times when we get to work together in the larger ship and do that kind of Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica type combat, because I really enjoy those. I love the communication between and the coordination, but I'd also love for there to be chances to like take smaller ships out and have a squadron type fight. So I guess essentially I would like for there to be to have the best of both worlds, and that we could have a headquarters ship that is competent in and of itself and can also deploy a squadron for a dogfight.
Okay. I like the crew combat style personally. I think that's a cool dynamic. But that being said, who doesn't want to take a round in a squadron fight? I mean, that's just so awesome, but I do like in general, like crew Starship,
Well, especially if you can combine your squadron into a Voltron,
Yeah.
Why not both?
Okay, so this is a kind of a general question from 10 Lawn Gnomes, otherwise known as Eric. And he asks, how do you approach a string of terrible rolls that lead to the party missing out on information either I wanted you to have or you needed to have? And then he asks, would I give them a red herring but make them work for a real clue? So, I guess that's directed at me, but I kind of want you to answer it at least on the, when you know that there's some information there, and particularly for you, Josh, because you had a string of bad rolls with the app check. How do you approach that when that happens?
I mean, as a player, it's definitely frustrating, but the best thing to do is like real life. If you, first you don't succeed, try again. And if that doesn't work, find another angle of attack on it. Find another way to try and find the information. Because you as a player probably know, like, there's definitely a thing here that I need to know or that we need to know to progress the story. But also trust that the GM will get you there.
Heath, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand. I at least in the podcast, play the Marshall character. I'm not very knowledge based. And to that end, like us Titanium Mike, if we have a string of encounters where we know there's some knowledge we need to get, and we just keep having bad rolls and can't find it, I think Titanium Mike's strategy is find the most likely person who knows that information and beat it out of them.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that ties into finding alternate ways to get the information. I think that's good advice.
Right. It's a strategy,
As far as what I would do as a GM, I mean, like, there's a couple different ways. I mean, if it's information that I feel like they absolutely must have, then I don't put it behind a roll. Like, that's just, I'll try to find a way to make them not have to roll for it, because my thought in general about calling for a roll is that you should never call for a roll that you don't want failure to be an option for, or vice versa, that you don't want them to succeed. Like, you shouldn't call for a roll then. You know what I mean? Like,
right. I think and I don't mean to cut you off, but with my little bit of GMing experience I think it's much harder when you have a bit of information that it's not essential for them to beat the dungeon or the whatever they're going through, but it gives access to like the coolest feature in the dungeon that is not necessary. Like that's what
that's
really
where you
sucks.
have to decide at some point as a GM. And I think that's, that happens much later after you've run a few adventures, to where it's like, there may be whole chunks of the adventure that they miss, and you decide I think at some point that you're okay with that, because when I was first GMing, like for the first 3 years, even it was like, I wanted you guys to see everything, I wanted to do everything that was in the adventure. Like, I didn't want there to be a chunk that you missed that I thought was really cool, but like, as I've gone on and done it more and more, and it's like, if you miss it and it's not like crucial to the adventure, then you missed it, like, and that's that.
I have a tough time with that, but I have to prioritize, like, because I have a hard time separating myself and what I think is cool from what the party might think is cool. So like, if there's something that they could miss and it's not essential to the game, but I think that it is just going to unequivocally improve everyone's enjoyment and interest and intrigue in the dungeon or scenario or whatever, fuck it, I'll find a way to get it.
Yeah, well, like, again, I think that's where it goes back to where if it's something you as a GM absolutely want in the game, certainly don't put it behind a roll. I mean, you can't account for what the players are going to do. They might ignore it. They might do whatever they do. But like, if it's something that you want or need to happen in the game, and you put it up to chance, and then you like undermine that chance by not making the dice roll matter, then you take away the value of rolling dice later in the game. You take away their authenticity. You know what I mean? So like, well,
you can even harm like the trust,
right?
That's
right. Like, because
if
I roll, or you guys roll like a 12 perception in a room, and I'm like, well, you find this data pad that was hidden under the floor. It's like,
man, that was a 12.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, you didn't roll well enough for that.
You didn't. So then it kind of like takes away the meaning of the rolls. So that's kind of where I land on that. If it's something that really has to happen, I find a story way to where it doesn't require a roll, So next we're going to move on to a couple like fast round questions for Josh. Kind of like sets of questions from the same people.
Oh boy.
So first we're going to start with Robin.
Okay.
Boxers or briefs?
Both. Boxer briefs.
Okay.
Or a combination of the two, really.
How do you feel about being the only guy allowed in my bachelorette party?
Absolutely honored.
I'll tell you, I feel excluded.
No, so I asked about that like just as a joke, and she was like, "You okay?" I was like, "All right, then. I guess that's what's happening."
Okay, so then we have a quick run from Bipolar Pop Tart. First, When is Fel going to get his Fiona counterpart?
Oh, man. See, so pets are dangerous in TTRPGs because that gives the GM something to pull on the heartstrings. And I love my cat, and I can't imagine having Fel have a pet and then potentially losing it because he's a fucking adventurer.
Next question from Bipolar. When are you going to cosplay as Fel in a banana hammock and a Hawaiian shirt?
Okay, so an accurate cosplay of Fel, I'd need to be 17 feet tall, naked, and be able to change my skin. That's a lot, and also potential legal problems.
I mean, that's not the question, though.
Okay, so...
Yeah, it's when are you going to do it?
Well, when are you going to do it as Fel in a banana hammock and a Hawaiian shirt?
Probably never, honestly.
Oh, dude.
But the banana hammock is where I draw the line.
And no, if you just make the Hawaiian shirt long enough, it covers up the banana hammock. There's no
Fair
problem.
enough. And learn to walk on stilts, right?
Bipolar is getting shut down left and right here. Well, we're going to end on this last question from... Well, we're not going to end, but the last question from Bipolar in this little lightning round is, Josh, why are you so pretty?
I was born with it. I don't know.
All right. And then Veridu has a couple quick Josh questions. How do you get your mustache to look so fabulous?
I actually use beard balm on it, and I comb it daily, and do not stop messing with it, brushing it, putting it, like kind of, pushing it down. I can't help it.
Yep, that's true. And what Disney princess are you? Veridu follows that up with.
Oh, God, what do you guys think? Because I've never considered that for myself.
Probably Ariel.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, just because of your kind of general world naivety, you know what I mean? It's very sweet and innocent.
Okay.
I'll
take it.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm not well versed enough in Disney princesses to dispute it.
Yeah, I mean, they're all fairly, awesome, badass type, go through these arcs and whatever. And I don't know that I would correlate to any of them, but I could see Ariel for sure.
Yeah. What is this place? What is this thing?
let me just hop into another plane and date this person.
Let me just be your crab sidekick. I'm just like running around anytime he like does a horrible joke. I just cover it up by going under the sea, under the sea.
Oh man! All right, so then we have a question, an actual question from Bipolar Pop Tart. Says, what do you think would be the first thing to break on a starship, given your vehicular maintenance experience?
First thing to break would probably be the computer systems in some form or fashion. Either that or a hydraulic leak of some sort, like something that any moving part is likely to break.
All right. Makes sense. Following that up with a question from John himself, John Thomas himself has a question. Favorite plane and why?
The C-17 because I work on it.
Okay. Yeah.
Are you talking about an
you meant airplane.
Okay, so favorite airplane is the P-38 Lightning. It's such a weird design. The twin tails, single cockpit, twin engine. It's old World War II. Not really fighter, not really bomber. It's not really good at anything, but it looks really cool.
What's the one that has the shark mouth painted on it?
I mean, a lot of them did, but
traditionally
modern would be an A-10, the Warthog. But it's not a shark. It's got a tooth.
Warthog.
So it's a Warthog.
No, there was one that had the mouth, like an actual mouth.
I mean, that was honestly a ton of World War II planes had those.
Okay, I just thought it was like one that particularly did.
Last question of the night. From Giuseppe. Metroidvanias are neither Metroids nor Vanias. Discuss, but you have 30 seconds.
First off, I disagree because Metroidvania has become from both Metroid and Castlevania, so Metroid games count as Metroidvanias, Castlevania games, Symphony of the Night, and the DS games count as Vanias. Other ones, they take and borrow from the genre, and they earn the name through being similar to those two games.
You did it. You did it in under 30 seconds.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Taking inspiration.
Yeah.
Remind me next Signal Screams. I'll actually give you an inspiration for that.
Hell yeah.
Oh, you heard it here, folks. You heard it here.
Next Thursday, remind me to tell Adam to give me an inspiration.
Before the session.
6 o'clock.
You hear it here.
Oh,
6 a.m.
It
It's at 6
that.
a.m.
All right, you can do that off air. That's it for the listener questions today.
I've only got one question for you guys, and we can just be brief about it. But now that we've covered most of the book, what got you guys the most excited? What are you looking forward to the most? The one thing, if you had to
Consciousness
pick one.
uplink drive. I want Fel to become a part of the ship.
Right. Okay.
Integrating a boarding situation into the story.
Okay. So, yeah, that's about it, guys. Before we get out of here, I'd like to first thank Josh for being on with us today. I know it's been a while. Hope you had a good time. I know we went long.
Man, I had a blast. Like I'm glad to have been able to be here.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, this book is really exciting. It's also very crunchy, like there's a lot of rules to suss out, but I think it's such a welcome addition to make this universe bigger and feel more lived in and more realistic, even though it's like a fantasy sci-fi kind of game, right?
Absolutely.
So before we get out of here, I'd like to give a few thank yous. First, a huge thank you to Paizo for continuing to expand the Starfinder system that we here at STF have come to love so much. This book is awesome, as have been all of the books that we've gotten prior to this. With every single book that comes out, I'm more and more proud to be, an advocate for this system. It just gets more exciting and more rewarding to be involved with, right? I'd also like to thank Roll20, as always, for making these STF adventures possible, at least for our crew. If it wasn't for Roll20, we wouldn't have been able to do any of this as far as being a podcast. Also, our sponsor, Norse Foundry. I'd like to thank those guys, both for their support and sponsorship, and also for the amazing dice that Adam and John so kindly bought me for my birthday. I got the Fireball set and the Dead Man's Gold set, and they're awesome, and I have a whole tray full of dice now to roll. Don't forget that you can use the code STF at checkout for purchases at Norse Foundry's website to get yourself a discount if you want to get some new dice or a new, dice box or roller or whatever other products they may have to offer. Take advantage of that.
Indeed. Truly.
All right, that's it, guys. I appreciate both of you being on. Adam, I appreciate your time. I know you've got to do some storm prep. Josh, I appreciate your time. I'm just glad you got to catch another episode of TOMTalks that's not a full book recap.
No, I'm glad to be here and, happy to come back anytime.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think there's only one thing left, guys.
We'll see you.
We'll see
you.